So the 8.3 lecture, we're going to be dealing with geometric sequence and series. And so what you want to know is that basically we call it a common ratio and we give it the letter R. And instead of adding or subtracting like we did in the arithmetic, now we are multiplying. And just to point out, we should multiply all the time. So if I take a number and let's say the number is 10 and I divide by 2, I get 5. Whereas if I take 10 times 1/2, I also get 5. So notice in the definition here, it's continually multiplying. So if you are thinking divide by 2, we want to be over here and say it's multiplying by 1/2. So the R would be 1/2. All right, so determine the sequence, determine if it is geometric, and if so, find the common ratio. So start by putting in a 1, and 6 times -2 to the first power would just be -12. And the next number would be 6 times -2 squared. And so -2 squared is 4 times 6 is 24. And 6 times -2 cubed, now that's 8. -8 times 6 is -48. So when you go -12, 24, -48, you can keep going. But just like in arithmetic, we took the next number and divided by the one in front. So what's 24 divided by -12? That's -2. What's -48 divided by 24? That's -2. So R is -2. All right, so the next one, we can do the same thing. You can take 4 divided by 1. I get 4. 9 divided by 4, I get 2.25. So not geometric. As soon as you find one R value that's not the same, you can just stop and move on. Now, finding the formula, you know that if we start in the recursive kind of mode, to find the next term, all you have to do is multiply the first one by R. So to find the next term, you take the term right in front of it and you multiply by the R. Well, if you look at this formula down here, it's kind of telling you the same thing. So this will be given to you for the test. But again, we don't tell you what it is, but that's how you can find it. So it says, write the first 5 terms of the geometric sequence whose first term is 3 and whose common ratio is 2. So you're going to start with the 3, then you're going to multiply by 2 and get 6, then 12, then 24, then 48. So remember, just the first 5 terms. All right, the next one is a DIY, so go ahead and do that one on your own. Come back and find the answer. Pause the video now. All right, so you can see right here we're starting with the 1, and then you multiply by -3, and you get -3. Then you take the last answer and multiply by -3, and you get 9. And then you multiply by -3, you get -27, +81. So when R is negative, you're going to go back and forth between positives and negatives. So just double check that you're getting the negatives where they're supposed to be. But those are the first 5 terms. All right, so on a problem like this, sometimes I use geometric or a G for the geometric, G sub n. And this will be the first term times R to the n minus 1, or sometimes they put it in parentheses, however you want to do it. If somebody says find the 15th term, so we do the 15th geometric term. First term is 20, R is 4, and you do 15 minus 1. So this is going to be a fairly big number. And so on the calculator, it would look like first term 20 times an R value of 4 raised, and only the 4 gets raised to the 15 minus 1, or 14. So those of you that have the calculator that puts the little caret symbol on it, you're going to have to put this in parentheses or just do it in your head. But anyway, you get 5,368,709,120. So 5,368,709,120. So that's what the answer would be. All right, DIY, use the information here, write your formula out, and probably use a calculator to get it. Pause the video now. All right, so if we go over and look at the answer, that's what we found before. And now this one, first term 4, 1/2 is the r value, and only the 1/2 gets raised to the 9 minus 1 or 8th power. When you get this answer, again, I would always hit math, enter, enter, and you end up with a 1/64 for an answer. All right, so now we're supposed to find a formula for the nth term, and so what you're going to see is 15 divided by 5 is 3, 45 divided by 15 is 3, so I know my r value is 3. And so a nice geometric sequence, you always put the first term, and then you do the r, and you raise that to the n minus 1. Pretty straightforward. I don't know. So that you can check the answer by putting in 3 and see if you get 45, but that's what you do. So if I would set this up as negative 64 and 1/8 and r, so the idea would be if I make what is actually the second term, if I make that into a sub 1 so that I can put it in for where the 64 is, I moved it backwards 1, so this would become what I'd call the fourth term. So right now this formula looks like it's finding the fourth term, so I could call it the 4 minus 1 power there. So if I solve this, I would take and divide both sides by negative 64. So if you go to your calculator, you can take 1 divided by 8 and divide by negative 64. And maybe you're going to hit math, enter, enter. So now you have negative 1 over 512 is equal to r cubed. Now you would want to cube root both sides. So you can raise to the 1 divided by 3 power, and you get negative 1/8. So over here, I divided by negative 64, and I got this is equal to r cubed, and then I cube root both sides, and I get negative 1/8. So then it says find the seventh term, so then I would do g sub 7 is, now this is where it gets a little bit weird, I guess. We don't really know what a sub 1 is in this problem, so let's go back and find an a sub 1. So if the second term is negative 64, I don't really need to do this because I can adjust it the way we just did, but a sub 1, and then I can do negative 1/8 raised to the 2 minus 1 power. Well, 2 minus 1 is 1, so I'm really dividing by negative 1/8 on both sides. And so remember, when you divide by a fraction, the number is going to get bigger. So if you take negative 64 and you divide by, I'm putting it in parentheses, negative 1/8, I actually get an a sub 1, that's 512. So now g sub 7 would be 512 negative negative 1/8 to the 7 minus 1 power. So g sub 7 is 512 negative 1/8 to the 6th power. Oh. So now I'm doing this. So we're going to type that into our calculator. 512, the r value we found was negative 1/8. And we're raising that to the 6th power, 7 minus 1. And again, let's hit math, enter, enter. And g sub 7 is 1 over 512. So what's the sum formula look like? Now, we have to be a little careful because remember, right there, it's not n minus 1 anymore. It's just r to the n. So it's the first term times that crazy thing in parentheses, which is 1 minus r to the nth power divided by 1 minus r. And that n only affects the r up top. So first of all, we're supposed to find the sum, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terms. And then what's 1 divided by 5? Well, that's 0.2. What's 0.2 divided by 1? Well, that's 0.2. So it kind of looks like my r is 0.2 in this case. And so now I can sum it up. Now what's different is I don't have to know any other terms but the first one, and then how many I'm dealing with, and what's r. I don't have to know first and last like we did for arithmetic. So first term is 5, and I generally put that on top of the fraction. It doesn't matter where you put it, I guess. But and then I do 1 minus 0.2 to the 6th power all over 1 minus 0.2. So we're going to type this into our calculator. And again, some students will have issues down here, but 1 minus 0.2 is just 0.8. So if we go to the calculator, 5 parentheses 1 minus 0.2 raised to the 6th. That's the top. And remember, we're dividing by 0.8. And you can hit math, enter, enter to see if that's a nice number. So either one of these answers, I probably would just write it down as approximately 6.25. All right. So again, remember that means to sum. So we're supposed to sum this up, and we're going from 1 to 12. So that's 12 terms. Now what you might have to do on this problem is plug in 1, plug in 2, and see what's happening. So when you plug in 1, it's 4 times 0.3, so 4. Let's clear this out. 4.3 raised to the first power, 1.2. Then you do 4.3 raised to the second. So I'm just putting these numbers in. 4.3, start at a 1, then a 2, and then a 3. But what you're seeing when you do this is that the first term is 1.2. A lot of students will say that the first term is 4. But that's actually, in this format, that's actually a sub 0. So first term was 1.2. And then what I'm finding out when you do this on the calculator is that this 0.3 is actually your number. So what's 0.36 divided by 1.2? 0.3. So you can do 1 minus 0.3 to the 12th power all over 1 minus 0.3. So again, on the bottom that's 0.7. So let's go to the calculator. 1.2 parentheses, 1 minus 0.3 raised to the 12th, and we're dividing by 0.7. If you want, you can try hitting math, enter, but so about 1.714. Uh, 1.714. All right, so now this one's a DIY. So you're gonna try to find it. What I would do, because it's summation, is maybe find the first, the second, and the third numbers. See if you can find the pattern. Obviously, this is geometric days, so you probably can just go to the geometric formula. So you need the first term. You have to be really careful. What's the first term? And find your R. Pause the video now. Okay, so if you've been working on this one, the answer is going to look like this. The way this person did it is they just took 4, this checks it, 4 to the 1 minus 1, 4 to the 2 minus 1, and you're finding that your R is 4 all the way along, because 4 to the 1 minus 1 is 0, which is 1. 4 to the 2 minus 1 is 4, which is, so you can see 1, 4, 16, you're just multiplying by 4. Well, first term technically is 1. 1 minus 4 to the 7th over 1 minus 4, you're dividing by -3. You should have got 5461. All right, so the last formula you're given on the formula sheet will be this one right here. S, the sum, is the first term, 1 minus R. And we're only going to use that when we're dealing with what is called an infinite geometric sequence. You should only use it when the R value, the absolute value of the R value is 1, or basically when it's between -1 and 1. So this one, again, is the geometric, where this is a sub 0. So you can't just write down the 4 necessarily. You have to be really careful. So what we're going to do is put the 0 in, and I get 4 times 0.6 to the 0 power, and so I do get 4. So even though I'm starting at 0, I get 4, and that's, I know that can be a little confusing, but the first term that they want me to find is 4. Now, if you do another one, take the 1 and put it in there. Now you get 4 times 0.6 to the first, which is 2.4. And you can see then that R is 0.6. So the geometric sum is first term 4 over 1 minus 0.6. And I guess just go to our calculator. And the 4 is on top. And we're dividing by 1 minus 0.6 is dividing by 0.4. And so we're getting 10. All right, so on this problem, you can take your 0.5 divided by 5. You can take your 0.05 and divide by 0.5. You can take your 0.005 and divide by 0.05. So if you do all these, what do we get? So if you take your 0.5 and you divide by 5, you can call it 0.1, or you can hit math, enter, and then you do your 0.05 divided by 0.5. You keep getting 0.1, or like I said, math, enter, 1/10. So whatever you want to call it, R is 0.1 or 1/10. So then the sum, because this means forever, is a geometric sum. So you're going to do first term divided by 1 minus 0.1, which is the same as 5 over 0.9. calculator, 5 divided by 0.9 looks like that, and you can hit math, enter, enter. So either 50 over 9 or 5.5 repeating.